5th August is a very significant date. 2 years ago, this day, Article 370, which gave a special status to the then state of Jammu and Kashmir, was abrogated. Prime Minister Narendra Modi promised a new dawn in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. What and how much has changed on ground? India Today's senior executive editor Shweta Singh is on ground zero and she sent us this exclusive ground report.
August 2019. Markets shut, empty streets, and eerie silence. August 2021. 2 years on, a guarded caution remains. Markets have opened, traffic is plying, but has the promised change arrived?
2 साल पहले 5 अगस्त को ही आर्टिकल 370 को हटाकर जम्मू कश्मीर के हर नागरिक को हर अधिकार, हर सुविधा का पूरा भागीदार बनाया गया था.
Mainstream leaders who were kept in detention for months in the Kashmir Valley are today maybe less powerful, but they are definitely united. The PDP organized protests today to mark 2 years of what Mehbooba Mufti called a black day.
PDP activists are raising slogans against the Modi government and they are demanding the restoration of Article 370.
आज का दिन जम्मू कश्मीर के लिए मातम का दिन है. ये लोग आज जो है मातम मना रहे हैं, जो जुल्म, सितम और बर्बरियत का दौर शुरू किया 2019 में बीजेपी की सरकार ने.
Bharatiya Janata Party has demolished every fundamental and constitutional institutions, not only in Jammu and Kashmir but in the entire country.
Street violence that used to erupt earlier, fermented by secessionist ideological groups, is a rare sight now. Saeed Ali Shah Gilani is no more deciding the valley's calendar. The administration recently released a circular stating those involved in stone pelting will not be eligible for the government services anymore, or even for the clearance of their passport. The hope lies with the youth of Jammu and Kashmir. The key is to give them the deserving opportunities. So what next? Youngsters believe that many announcements have been made, but the implementation is slow.
जी मैं 3 महीने से सीख रहा हूँ.
3 महीने से क्या बनना है?
मुझे सिंगर ही बनना है.
सिंगर बन के क्या करना है? क्या
मुझे अपने कश्मीर के लिए कुछ करना है, मतलब कश्मीर का नाम रोशन करना है और अपने पेरेंट्स का और अपने उस्तादों का.
However, restrictions in 2019 and COVID lockdown ever since has crippled business and affected education of children, especially in the Kashmir Valley. The change, as promised by the government, has been slow on the ground. And for peace in Kashmir, time is of ultimate essence.
This time around, we've got football matches which will be arranged in downtown. We have women's cricket plus shikara race. This is the new Kashmir, in which every single Kashmiri has to participate. With camera person Syed Mohsin and Yogendra Singh, this is Shweta Singh in Srinagar for India Today.
So the tallest tricolour coming up at Gulmarg, Shikara race happening on the 5th of August. This is the dawn of a new Kashmir. Now we are told that there are a large number of tourists who are also heading to the valley. So those doomsday sayers, those who are saying that there wouldn't be anyone left to lift the tricolour, to shoulder the tricolour, the question remains, where are they today? Now India Today's Shweta Singh also spoke to Charu Sinha, the Inspector General of the Central Reserve Police Force, about the situation on ground, especially about what about all those stone pelters who would appear at the drop of a hat earlier? What's the situation now? Shweta Singh reports.
So it's the 5th of August, the second anniversary of abrogation of Article 370, and we have with us the First Lady Officer as the IG of Srinagar sector, Charu Sinha, ma'am. Ma'am, are you concerned about security on the 5th of August? Or do you think that people have started returning to normal lives? They are tired of all the violence and they want to leave it behind?
So I will say that people are tired of all the violence that they have seen around them for umpteen number of years now. And in the last 3 decades, what they have been through, the trauma that they have been through, they are definitely fed up of it and they yearn for a life of normalcy. But yes, as of now, security is still a concern. And so we take all the precautions that are required to be able to address this concern.
Ma'am, has stone pelting seen a downward trend? Is it under control now?
I will say it has seen a downward trend and a massive downward trend, and as of now things are very much under control.
While the drone menace has been more a part of the Jammu sector, but are the forces on alert even in...
Completely, because it's a threat that we cannot ignore, and it is a threat which is looming large in front of us and we cannot ignore it, so we are alert all the time.
And joining me now on India First is Dr. Jitendra Singh, Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office and Member of Parliament from Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Singh, what has changed for the better in Jammu and Kashmir in the past 2 years since action on Article 370? The Gupkar Alliance Minister says Naya Kashmir is actually a joke and a hoax on the people.
I think I'm glad, Gaurav, you asked that question. This is the most oft asked question these days. And I think in a single sentence, I would suffice saying when confronted with the question, what has changed after 5th of August 2019? I think more important for us is to realize that the biggest change happened on the 5th of August 2019 itself, because that was a correction of a huge aberration. It was, as I also said on that day during the debate in the Rajya Sabha, it was a miscarriage of history. It was an anomaly of constitution. It was a betrayal of democracy. And in the sense that, and I would not speak without evidence. For example, when I say it was a miscarriage of history in the sense that we had moved on to adopt a certain system but left a certain part of the country out of it. As far as the constitution is concerned, the very protagonists of Article 370 had themselves enshrined in it that this was going to be a temporary provision. Okay. And in spite of that, it carried on for 70 years. And of course, as far as democracy is concerned, all of us know that the local bodies and the district councils have been constituted only now, nearly 7 decades after they had been constituted. That
so let's now come to specifics.
So having said that, now the second part of your question is,
if we were to come to specifics, so 5th August 2019, we were told that this is a new dawn in Jammu, Kashmir and in Ladakh. So what has been the biggest achievement of the Narendra Modi government post 5th August 2019?
No, more than one. Now let me, if you broadly classify them, there have been changes at the constitution level, at the level of the grassroots democracy, at the level of development, at the level of the fulfillment of the aspirations of people. And as I said, I will be more specific than you want me to be. And so let me now count one by one. There are 819 provisions of the Indian Constitution which have become applicable only in the last 2 years. Can somebody answer me? What was the justification in not allowing something like a Child Marriage Act being implemented in Jammu and Kashmir? Now, regardless, that had no bearing on the special status. I don't think any country in the world or any section of society would have anything against that. Now, can somebody tell me why Dowry Act was not implemented? Why right to education? All this has happened only in the last 2-3 years. If I go on and on, you just give me some time. Now, at the 73 and the 74 amendment of the local bodies, the panchayats again introduced the last two. Earlier, what was happening? The entire central grant was going to the state ministry. Now it's going directly to the local elected representatives. Similarly, if you go by 335A, I need not say, at least there are 3 chief ministers whose own daughters and sisters were deprived of the property rights, but they preferred to remain quiet because it suited them. It sustained their continuation in power. Now, as far as the Pakistan refugees are concerned, they got their rights. You have 2 prime ministers who went on to become two West Pakistan refugees who went on to become prime ministers of the country, namely Dr. Manmohan Singh from District Jhelum, Mr. Inder Kumar Gujral. One of them became Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. L.K. Advani. And here you have a set of people who were not given their constitutional rights, their citizenship rights, their voting rights. And unfortunately, I sometimes shudder to think if these great men had chosen to settle down by a quirk of fate in Jammu and Kashmir, the destiny would have deprived them of becoming Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister. All this has happened in the last 2-3 years. Then the Safai Karmcharis, the Balmikis, even if a Balmiki child graduates, does post-graduation, postdoctoral, even then he was entitled to take up only the job of cleansing or scavenging. Now he is equal to all.
Okay.
The Economically Weaker Section Act, this has now been put. The International Border Resolution, this has now come. Schemes
How would
like
you respond, Minister?
Jammu Kashmir is the first territory in India to have 100% universal cover of Ayushman Bharat. All this is in last 2 years and 3 years.
Okay.
Now,
How
as
would
far
you
as
respond to criticism?
let me carry on. For those who don't know the specifics or who want to ask specifics and who think that since there's loud noise made by this gang and then they say that they have carried it because possibly the research is not done while conducting the interview. As far as governance is concerned, the Prevention of Corruption Act, which got introduced in India in 1988, which was amended by the Modi government in 2018, was introduced only last year in Jammu and Kashmir.
So what you're saying is that power that was restricted to a few hands.
I'm going to be very specific and I challenge anybody to contest this. Okay. Abolition of interviews announced by Prime Minister Modi from the ramparts of Red Fort was not applied in Jammu and Kashmir because they wanted to promote their own cronies and carry on with the nepotism and whatever misappropriation was going on. It was introduced only last year.
How would you respond to that criticism that stone pelters, now, stone pelters will not be entitled to a passport on the basis of an adverse police report, or jobs of alleged overground workers, government jobs are being taken away and multiple such jobs have been taken away in recent months. The opposition or members of the Gupkar Alliance say that this is not on the basis of any court order but just adverse police report, and J&K is becoming a police state, sir.
No, you don't have to go by, because like a good journalist, you also have to go by evidence, as I'm trying to respond by evidence. Now, tell me any country in the world, the most advanced democracies of the world, let it be USA, let it be UK. Is there any liberty given to challenge the integrity of the country? That's a bottom line followed by even by the most advanced democracies of the world, which have had a longer experience of democracy than India. Then how do you expect, can you, by your conscience, allow somebody to pelt stone at the army and then go scot-free and go without being questioned? So I think these are the questions which we don't even have to be asked. I tell you one instance. Now again coming to specifics. Soon after 1965 war, President Lyndon Johnson was the president of USA. One of the Indian reporters during the press conference he was holding, because that was the Kashmir issue had again then come up. So Lyndon, one of the Indian correspondents said, "Sir, do we not have such instances in USA like Antarctica, like Georgia? They are different nationalities, different states have come together to form United States." And you know what President Johnson said? He immediately lost his cool and said, "Look here, gentlemen, these are settled issues. We don't rake up settled issues."
Okay.
So is it still to be settled? Whether you have to question the integration of Jammu and Kashmir with India and somebody is allowed to pelt stones at those who say it is not to be questioned?
The state stands bifurcated and downgraded, as some say, into two union territories, Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh. Is the situation, according to you, Minister, now ripe for restoration of statehood, elections, and is there a roadmap?
See, now again, because we go by the mindset of the past, neither I should be asked this question nor I should be answering this. To hold the election or not to hold the election is the prerogative of Election Commission of India, neither that of any minister nor that of any interviewer. So I wish you could ask that to the Chief Election Commission. Now, as far as the conditions, as far as the state is concerned, the conditions are concerned, I'm sure the Home Ministry is privy to certain inputs, certain intelligence reports to which neither I am privy nor you are privy. So we leave it to them and we don't make it a public issue also because we are not fully updated about it. But as far as election is concerned, of course, the Election Commission of India will take a call. It's a constitutional body and we have to bring out ourselves from that mindset of the past where Congress was interfering with the Congress governments were interfering with the functioning of the constitutional bodies, whether it was the Election Commission of India or the CBI.
Okay. Minister, we leave it at that for the moment. The second anniversary of abrogation of Article 370. Do we see faster development in Jammu and in Kashmir? Will that change be visible on ground in terms of jobs? Because, Minister, if I may, last 30 seconds, many argue that that promise of jobs, that promise of tourism, all of that did not actually happen, and the Gupkar Alliance once again says both jobs and tourism are on a downslide in the valley.
Now, if you give me just 60 seconds, I'll respond to this 30-second question. One, the promise of jobs does not mean government jobs. Unfortunately, we have put this in the mindset of the youth of Kashmir that the entire erstwhile state became dependent on government jobs, and government was the major employer. For any responsibility, no government in the world, be it any advanced country, can give a government job to everybody. But yes, a responsible government has to live up to the task of providing means of livelihood or preparing capacity for livelihood, which was already on the way. Now, why it has got delayed? And then again, this question was not properly retorted to by in certain interviews which are happening in the last 2-3 days, because of the lack of research. You see, when we look into the factors why it is delayed, when we do a research, we either eliminate other factors or we take into account. All of us know the entire country has been passing through this pandemic for the last 1.5 years.
Okay.
All the processes, all these schemes have got delayed in every other state. The investors' outreach had started. The erstwhile, the past governor, Mr. Murmu, had started a process of investors' outreach. I was myself part of that in 1 or 2 occasions. He held one in Delhi, one in Hyderabad, one in Chennai, one in Kolkata. We used to have so many of aspirant investors that the auditorium doors had sometimes to be kept open because they were standing even outside. Unfortunately, this pandemic has struck us. But just when it cools down, even today, I don't want to now name them, but they are on record. We have some of the leading houses in the health sector who have already engaged themselves with the UT government of Jammu and Kashmir to set up their hospitals, to set up their establishment. We have a huge offers coming from the food sector. So I don't think now, because of the pandemic, everything got delayed.
Okay.
It got delayed in every state. Now, if you compare it with the other states, then only you will be able to justify what is being said. So you can't look at it in isolation by being oblivious by the other imponderables, the other factors that have affected in general to the rest of the country as well.
Fair enough. Minister, for the moment, many thanks for joining me here on India First.
Thank you, Gaurav.